The dig had gone quiet. Beneath the ancient Mexican plateau, in a narrow trench carved into the earth at the base of a pyramid, archaeologists brushed away centuries of packed soil and found something that stopped them cold. Skeleton after skeleton, arranged with unsettling precision, hands bound behind their backs. Not one, not a handful. Dozens, then over 100, laid out in careful rows, radiating from the base of a temple like spokes on a wheel of the dead. Some still wore necklaces of human jawbones. Others clutched fragments of obsidian blades shaped like the teeth of some unseen god. Whoever these people were, they had not died in battle, nor from disease, nor by accident. They had been placed here, deliberately, as part of something the living once believed was necessary. And every single one of them, historians would come to understand, had walked into this temple and never walked back out. This is the story of the Temple of the Feathered Serpent at Teotihuacan, one of the most haunting structures ever raised in the ancient world, and the civilization that built it, worshipped within it, and ultimately vanished, leaving behind a mystery that archaeologists are still trying to solve today. If you find stories like this compelling, stay with me, because what was found beneath this temple in the years since would only deepen the mystery, not resolve it. Long before the Aztecs ever set foot in the Valley of Mexico, centuries before they gave this abandoned city its now famous name, Teotihuacan was already a ruin. When Aztec pilgrims wandered among its colossal pyramids around the 14th century, they were so awestruck by the scale of what they found that they concluded only gods could have built it. They named it Teotihuacan, meaning roughly the place where the gods were created, believing this was the very spot where the sun and moon had been born at the dawn of time. But the people who actually built this city were gone long before the Aztecs arrived, and to this day, no one knows for certain what they called themselves, what language they spoke, or even what name they gave to their own capital. At its height, sometime between 100 and 600 CE, Teotihuacan was one of the largest cities on Earth, home to perhaps 100,000 to 200,000 people, rivaling contemporary Rome in scale and far surpassing anything else in the Americas at that time. Its two great pyramids, the Pyramid of the Sun and the Pyramid of the Moon, still dominate the landscape today, connected by a broad ceremonial road the Aztecs later called the Avenue of the Dead, imagining it lined with the tombs of kings. But it is a third structure, smaller than its towering neighbors, yet arguably more chilling in what it reveals, that concerns us here: the Temple of the Feathered Serpent, known to archaeologists as the Ciudadella's Central Pyramid, dedicated to the deity later cultures would call Quetzalcoatl. Picture the temple as it once stood, its stepped facade adorned with sculpted stone heads of a plumed serpent, feathers rippling outward in stone as though caught mid-motion, alternating with the goggle-eyed visage of a fire or war deity archaeologists now call the war serpent. The heads once bore painted eyes, red and black pigment against pale limestone, catching torchlight and casting long shadows across the plaza below. Incense smoke curled from braziers at its base, and the air would have carried the mingled scent of copal resin, blood, and the dust kicked up by thousands of sandaled feet during great public ceremonies. This was not a quiet, meditative sanctuary. It was a stage for state power, where rulers whose names we still do not know asserted their authority through spectacle, architecture, and, as the excavations would prove, through calculated violence. For decades, the prevailing assumption among scholars was that the peaceful, sun-worshipping civilizations of central Mexico, unlike their later Aztec successors, had not practiced large-scale human sacrifice, or at least not on the scale seen at Tenochtitlan centuries later. Teotihuacan was imagined by some earlier researchers as a relatively benign theocracy, its power resting on trade, religious pilgrimage, and monumental architecture rather than bloodshed. That comfortable assumption began to unravel in 1980s, and especially in more thorough excavations, beginning in the 1980s and accelerating through the 2000s, led by archaeologists including Rubén Cabrera Castro and Saburo Sugiyama, whose careful work beneath and around the Temple of the Feathered Serpent revealed something far darker than anyone had expected. Sugiyama, working with Mexican and international teams, uncovered more than 200 human skeletons interred as dedicatory offerings around and beneath the temple's foundation. This was not the aftermath of a massacre or an act of desperation during some later crisis. The burials were deliberate, ritualized, and clearly planned as part of the temple's original construction, meaning the sacrifices occurred during the initial building phase, sometime in the early 3rd century CE. Many of the skeletons had their hands bound behind their backs, some at the wrist, others further up the arm, suggesting they were restrained, alive, at the moment of their deaths, or that their bodies were bound afterward as part of a ritual display. Some individuals were adorned with necklaces made from real and imitation human jawbones, others buried with elaborate collections of finely worked obsidian and shell ornaments shaped like eyes, noses, and teeth, arranged on their bodies as if part of ceremonial costume. Slate discs, worn like mirrors on the lower back, echoed imagery found elsewhere in Teotihuacan, associated with warriors and military status. This detail matters enormously because it reshaped how historians understood the temple's purpose. The apparent military symbolism, the obsidian projectile points found among the grave goods, the arrangement suggesting armed retinues, all pointed toward interpretation as either captured warriors from rival groups or, perhaps more unsettlingly, as members of Teotihuacan's own society, dressed and equipped as warriors specifically for the purpose of sacrifice, dedicated to consecrate this temple to war, fear, and cosmic order all at once. Isotopic analysis of the bones, examining the ratios of strontium and oxygen absorbed from local water and food sources during childhood, has offered some clues about where these individuals originally came from. The results have been genuinely surprising. Rather than confirming that all the victims were foreign captives brought from distant conquered lands, the evidence suggests a mix. Some individuals raised locally within the Teotihuacan Valley, others who spent their early years elsewhere, possibly along the Gulf Coast or in other regions of Mesoamerica. This has fueled an ongoing scholarly debate that remains unresolved. Were these sacrificial victims, prisoners of war, meant to symbolize conquest and dominance woven into the very foundation of the state's most sacred structures? Or were at least some of them willing or ritually selected members of Teotihuacano society itself, perhaps soldiers whose deaths were framed as an honor, binding their fate to the cosmic order the temple was believed to sustain? If you're finding this as unsettling as I did researching it, take a moment to like this video and subscribe, because the deeper we go into what lies beneath this pyramid, the stranger the story becomes. To understand why a civilization would bury over 200 human beings beneath a single temple, we need to step back into the belief system that shaped daily life in Teotihuacan. Like many Mesoamerican societies, the Teotihuacanos appear to have understood the universe as something requiring constant maintenance through ritual and, at times, blood. The sun's daily journey across the sky, the fertility of maize fields, the turning of cosmic cycles, all of it depended, in their cosmology, on human beings fulfilling their obligations to gods who had themselves made sacrifices to set the world in motion. Later Aztec mythology, inherited in part from earlier Teotihuacan traditions, told of gods casting themselves into a great fire to become the sun and moon, and of other deities offering their own blood so that the newly created sun would have the strength to move across the sky. Sacrifice, in this worldview, was not simply violence. It was reciprocity, a cosmic debt that the living owed to forces older and more powerful than themselves. The feathered serpent deity honored by this temple would go on to become one of the most enduring gods in Mesoamerican religion, worshipped for over 1,000 years across multiple civilizations, known later as Quetzalcoatl to the Aztecs and Kukulkan to the Maya. Associated with wind, learning, the planet Venus, and the boundary between earth and sky, the feathered serpent represented a fusion of the terrestrial and the divine, a snake capable of flight. At Teotihuacan, this deity's temple, positioned within the walled compound known as the Ciudadela, likely functioned as one of the most important ritual and political centers in the entire city, possibly linked to the installation or legitimization of rulers, though, remarkably, we still do not know the names of any Teotihuacano king. No royal tombs bearing inscribed names have ever been found. No dynastic list survives. Unlike the Maya to the east, who left behind detailed hieroglyphic records of their kings' births, wars, and deaths, Teotihuacan left almost no deciphered written language at all, only a few symbols and glyph-like markings whose meaning remains disputed among specialists. This absence is one of the great and enduring mysteries of the ancient Americas. A city of such staggering size and organizational complexity, capable of coordinating the labor of tens of thousands of people to construct pyramids that still awe visitors 17 centuries later, left behind no clear record of who ruled it or how. Some scholars have proposed that Teotihuacan may have been governed not by a single all-powerful king in the style familiar from Egypt or the Maya lowlands, but by a council or coalition of elite lineages sharing power, a theory partly supported by residential compounds that suggest multiple powerful family groups coexisting rather than a single dominant royal palace. If true, this would make Teotihuacan strikingly different from many of its contemporaries, and it raises a haunting question we still cannot fully answer. Who decided that this particular temple required over 200 human lives to consecrate it, and by what authority did they make that choice? The mystery deepens further beneath the temple itself. In 2003, a heavy rainstorm caused the ground near the Ciudadela to collapse, opening a sinkhole that led archaeologists to discover a long tunnel running nearly beneath the temple of the feathered serpent, extending over 100 meters into the earth. Using a remote-controlled robot nicknamed Tlaloc II in reference to the rain god, researchers from Mexico's National Institute of Anthropology and History spent years carefully mapping this passage before human archaeologists, led by Sergio Gomez Chavez, physically entered it. What they found was extraordinary. Thousands of artifacts, including finely carved jade figures, pyrite mirrors, jaguar remains, rubber balls, and, strangest of all, pools of liquid mercury deliberately placed at intervals along the tunnel floor. Some researchers have speculated the mercury may have been intended to represent an underworld river or a shimmering reflective surface, symbolizing another dimension of the cosmos, though its exact ritual purpose remains genuinely unknown. Chambers at the tunnel's end, positioned directly beneath the pyramid's center, have led some archaeologists to hypothesize this may have functioned as a symbolic entrance to the underworld itself, and possibly even the burial place of Teotihuacan's elusive rulers, though as of the most recent excavations, no confirmed royal remains have been definitively identified there. The search continues, and every new season of digging carries the possibility of finally answering a question historians have asked for over a century. If this kind of unresolved archaeological mystery fascinates you as much as it fascinates me, let me know in the comments what you think might be waiting in those final unexcavated chambers, because we are not finished yet. The temple's dark reputation did not end with its construction. Archaeological evidence suggests that sometime around 550 to 650 CE, Teotihuacan experienced a dramatic and violent decline. The Ciudadela, including the Temple of the Feathered Serpent, shows clear signs of deliberate, targeted destruction. Many of the serpent's carved stone heads on the facade were smashed or defaced, and the area was burned in what appears to have been an intentional, symbolically charged act, rather than random destruction from war or fire alone. Some scholars interpret this as an internal uprising, perhaps by a population that had grown resentful of a ruling elite whose authority rested partly on the memory of the very sacrifices we've been discussing, a population that, generations later, may have turned violently against the monuments representing that authority. Others point to evidence of prolonged drought and agricultural stress in the surrounding region, suggesting environmental pressures combined with political instability to fracture the city from within. The precise cause remains debated, and, as with so much about Teotihuacan, the destruction of its most important temple raises as many questions as it answers. What we can say with confidence, grounded firmly in the physical evidence recovered over decades of careful excavation, is this: the Temple of the Feathered Serpent was consecrated through an act of organized, ritualized mass sacrifice, unlike almost anything else documented in the ancient Americas at that scale and level of ceremonial detail. Over 200 people, dressed as warriors, bound, and arranged with deliberate precision, were interred beneath and around its foundations at the moment of its construction. Their deaths were not incidental. They were, in the eyes of whoever ordered this temple built, essential, a debt paid to forces they believed governed the fate of their entire civilization. Whether those individuals walked into that temple compound believing they were fulfilling a sacred honor, or whether they were dragged there as captured enemies with no choice at all, is a question the bones themselves cannot fully answer, and probably never will. So, what does the Temple of the Feathered Serpent ultimately reveal to us, standing here at the intersection of stone and silence so many centuries later? It shows us a civilization capable of extraordinary achievement, engineering pyramids that still inspire awe, sustaining a metropolis larger than most cities in Europe at the time, and yet a civilization that also believed, as so many ancient cultures did in different forms, that the cosmic order demanded human blood to hold itself together. It reminds us how much can be lost when a people leave behind no deciphered written word, no named kings, no surviving voice to explain, in their own words, what they believed and why. And it leaves us with an enduring, unsettling image: rows of bound figures beneath a temple, built to honor a god of wind and learning and the morning star, sacrificed to consecrate a building whose true name, whose true purpose in every detail, and whose true rulers remain, even now, hidden beneath the dust of an abandoned city. The temple no one returned from still stands at Teotihuacan today, its serpent heads worn by rain and time, watching silently over a mystery that archaeology has only begun to unearth, and one that continues, quietly and persistently, to call the living back into the dark.